Hello, welcome back. This is presumably what Aura wants you to believe. Which is why it begins with the product being promoted in very grandiose terms in a television advertisement. After all, this is how these goods are sold. They dupe you into thinking you need them until you're too neurotic to see that you don't. But Jaslyn seemed to be more concerned than most. She and her husband have recently moved to a gated neighborhood where she feels safer since she is still dealing with stress and anxiety from an incident 2 decades ago. A flashback suggests it was a house invasion, but the episode gradually reveals the information one at a time. Jaslyn has an internet business where she sells handmade jewelry. Her husband, Bryce, is one of those stereotypical control-freak horror husbands who mansplains home security to his wife, doesn't take her feelings seriously, and is more concerned with firing coworkers who accuse him of being OCD. It should come as no surprise that after Bryce goes to work, a lonely Jaslyn is surprised by a man who appears to be Jimmy Savile, who was left in the washing machine via the doorbell camera. He recognizes Jaslyn's name and desires her attention. Of course, when Jaslyn contacts the cops, the man vanishes. The Aura app does not capture anything, despite the fact that it is intended to, and neither does the camera that a neighbor had put up above the garage, which provides a clear view of Jaslyn's front door. I didn't notice the dude either. What transpired is chalked up to stress, a horrible dream, and the after effects of what Jaslyn went through as a child. Even when it appears that Aura would take a somewhat different turn by having Bryce physically see the creepy person on the app the next time he comes up, he instead phones the neighbor, Hwan, who claims he can't see anything on his cameras. So Bryce dismisses the whole thing as a joke. He believes a hacker has broken into their Wi-Fi and is torturing Jas, but he seems strangely nonchalant about it. He even suggests that Jas look into previous Aura pranks on YouTube so she can see how frequently it occurs. That's awful advice. So, unsurprisingly, Jaslyn discovers a hoax that was evidently not a prank and has many similarities to what she's going through. She also begins to piece together her background, recalling a scary janitor named Mr. Hendricks from high school to whom she was once humorously kind. He evidently took it seriously and began writing her love messages until he was hospitalized. And in the flashback, we discover that he has a striking likeness to the person from the doorstep. Despite being unable to uncover any information about Mr. Hendricks, Jaslyn is able to determine his sister's home address. She discovers that Dale has been residing in the house since he lost his high school job, but that he has suddenly vanished. He's also really interested in computers, which Bryce interprets as him being the one hacking into the Wi-Fi, while not believing Jaslyn's assertions that the person on the step was him in the first place. When Jaslyn arrives home, Dale is there, and she invites him in. After being allowed access, Dale apologizes to Jaslyn for making her feel uncomfortable at school. She apologizes for making fun of him with her and her friends. They decide to forgive each other, and his eyes begin to bleed as he turns to dust. His lifeless body was taken out of a river the next day, according to the local press. The suggestion is that Jas has assisted him in moving on. So, when a young lady appears on their doorstep the next day, begging for admittance in the same way, we are to assume that she is another person who has suffered and is in need of closure. This is why Bryce becomes skeptical after hearing the lady's voice and hearing the name of Grace Park, where Jas subsequently finds the woman, Mary Jean Burkett, was the victim of a hit and run. He tosses the Aura in the garbage and insists that it's all a hoax. But Jaslyn has already deduced what we have, that the ghost of Mary Jean is visiting their home for a reason. And because she doesn't know Jas, it must be related to Bryce. When confronted by Jas, he ultimately admits that Mary Jean was his fiancée, and that the night she died was also the night he ended their engagement. When Jas allows Mary Jean in, Bryce is forced to explain that Mary Jean was pregnant with his kid, and since he couldn't let that get in the way of his plan, he used the hit and run to step on her throat and break her neck. Never put your confidence in someone who is cruel to animals. It's ridiculous how quickly Jaslyn turns on Bryce, and equally ridiculous how blasé he is about killing Jas with a fireplace poker now that she knows his secret. Nothing about this resembles how actual people might think or behave. But it doesn't matter, since the spirit of Mary Jean, holding the ghost of her child, manages to. Is it possible to telekinetically crush Bryce to death? Fortunately, he burns like Dale Hendricks, so Jaslyn won't have to deal with any unpleasant questions about it. However, 3 months later, when Jas has moved into a new apartment building where Aura doorbells are standard, she does receive a knock at the door. I'm curious who that may be. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and comment below.